Necessity wall. What will be the questions for December for all? Future. The past is the future. In the future is the past. Is the future. Is the future. In the future is the past. Prediction 1. The box plots summarize the distance in meters a group of people ran in a certain amount of time. Group 1 is the group above, and Group 2 is the group below. Based on the box plots, which of the following statements must be true? The mean distance of the group is greater than the mean distance of Group 2. We can't really find the mean just from box plots, so it's probably not going to be that. The mean distance of Group 1 is less than the mean distance. Again, probably not that. The median distance of Group 1 is greater than the median distance of Group 2. And the median distance of Group 1 is less than the median distance. So they're using the same axis here, even if we can't totally read it. And this one is greater, right? The median is greater than this. So median of Group 2 is greater than median of Group 1. And that would give us D. The median distance of Group 1 is less than the median distance of Group 2. Okay, so we have questions on this one. Let me know. It's just about reading it carefully and understanding. Honestly, I think the hardest part is reading the answer choices carefully and not getting confused about which one's greater and which one's less in each option. So now we have HB. Dataset A consists of 10 positive integers less than 100. The list shown gives 9 of these integers from dataset A. The mean of these 9 integers is 87. If the mean of dataset A is an integer greater than 87, what is the value of the largest integer in dataset A? This, for my money, is probably the hardest question in this category. So what's happening is they're telling us dataset A, is what we're seeing, has 10 numbers, and we're seeing 9. All right, so we have another one here. If the following equation has no solution, what can not be the value of n plus m? So we have mx plus 3n equals negative 4x plus 9m. So if there's no solution, that would mean the x's line up, but this part doesn't line up. So it'd be parallel, but have different y-intercepts. So what we're going to do is we're going to find when they have infinite solutions, and then see when it cannot be the same. So m is going to equal negative 4, because that would give us the same thing here. So now we can plug in negative 4 on this side and this side. So we'll get negative 4 x plus 3n equals negative 4x plus negative 36. So then the negative 4x's cancel, and we're left with 3n equals negative 36. So then n has to equal negative 12. The sum would then be negative 4 plus negative 12, and that will give us negative 16. N plus m cannot equal negative 16. So let me know if you have questions on that one. I'll be happy to help you with that as well. But this one should be pretty straightforward. It's just quizzing you on whether you understand the concept of no solutions. And you know that it's parallel because they tell us it has no solutions. That's why we know m has to be negative 4. And from there, we have to find n, okay? The height of a cone is 24 inches. The slant height is 25 inches. What is the volume of the cone in cubic inches rounded to the nearest whole number? So if you imagine a cone, right? I'm not a great drawer, but it's like this. So the height is here, and the slant height is this part here. So with the radius, it's going to make a right triangle. So we'd have something like this. R. Then we're going to have S, and let's call this H. So H here is 24. This is 25. We can do Pythagorean theorem to find R, and then we can find the volume. So we'll do 24 squared plus R squared equals 25 squared. So we'll get 576 plus R squared equals 625. When we subtract, we will get R squared equals 49. That's a nice clean number. R equals 7. And now what's the formula for area of a cone, or volume of a cone? It's 1/3 pi r squared times height. And that's the perpendicular height. So we'll do 1/3 pi, r is going to be 7, squared times the height will be 24, and that will get us 1,231.5, so it will equal 1,232 when we round up. Okay, so again, you want to be careful on this one, but you want to think about triangles. A lot of times triangles come up in all sorts of math questions, geometry questions, because they're used to find missing side lengths. Here we were missing the radius. All right, so this one's a hard level question, so let's see just how hard it is. Ax plus 4 times 3x squared minus bx minus 2 equals 15x cubed minus 18x squared minus 34x minus 8. The equation above is true for all x, where a and b are constants. What is the value of ab? So we have to find a and b and multiply them together. Okay, so to find a, we can just do ax times 3x squared to get the 15x cubed. So then that must mean that a equals 5, right? Because 5 times 3 equals 15. X times x squared gets to the x cubed. So a equals 5. I'm going to plug that in here and then FOIL out. It's not technically foiling, but distribute everything and see how they line up. So we're going to have 5x plus 4 times 3x squared minus bx minus 2. And now from here we're going to get 15x cubed when I multiply this times 12 plus 12x squared minus 5bx squared minus 4bx minus 10x minus 8. So now the minus 8 cancels with this minus 8 here. Then we're going to have the 15x cubed cancels with this 15x cubed. So what we're left with really, and then we can combine these parts here, right? So we can combine this and this has to equal that and that. So we're going to have 12x squared minus 5bx squared minus 4bx minus 10x equals negative 18x squared minus 34x. Now, the x squareds have to line up with the x squareds, and the x's have to line up with the x's. So you just have to do one of them, and it'll work for both. So let's say, so we're going to have 12 minus 5b equals negative 18. Because 12x squared minus 5bx squared equals negative 18x squared, we can get rid of that. So we get negative 5b equals negative 30. So b equals 6. If we did that here, and we did negative 4b minus 10 equals negative 34, then if we did that, we'll add 10. We'll get negative 4b equals negative 24. Again, b equals 6. So b equals 6, a equals 5. So ab equals 5 times 6. It equals 30. So a lot of students feel like this is overwhelming because they don't like to FOIL when there's 3 numbers in one of them. But you can do it. It's totally possible. They're going to give you something where you can find one of the values easily first, and then you build from there. You cancel out. And the trick thing here is knowing that this and this have to add up to this and this. Okay, if you know that, then you'll be totally fine. It simplifies things because it feels like there's 4 different variables going on or 2 different variables. But it gets really simple when you know x squareds have to go with x squareds, x cubes have to line up with x cubes, and x's have to go with x's. A circle has its center at 8, negative 3. A line is tangent to the circle at 12, 0. What is the slope of the line? So we have to find not the distance between these, but the slope made by these two. And then the slope of the tangent line is perpendicular because when you have tangent lines to circles, they have perpendicular slopes, so it'll be the negative reciprocal. So we'll do 0 minus negative 3 over 12 minus 8 equals 3 over 4. So the slope of the line would be the inverse of that, and it'll be negative 4 over 3. A bag of tiles has different shapes and colors. The table to the left shows the distribution of a shape and color of tiles in the bag. If a person draws a triangular tile from the bag, the probability that the tile is yellow is 0.375. What is the value of n? So n is here. So they draw a triangular one, right? The probability of it being yellow is 0.375. So n out of the total, which would be 6 plus 9 plus n, equals 0.375. So then that's going to be n over 15 plus n equals 0.375. And that will give us n equals 5.625, right? That's 0.375 times 15 plus 0.375 n. And when we subtract it, right, from n, we're going to get 0.625 n equals 5.625. And then when we divide by 0.625, we're going to get 5.625 divided by 0.625. And that's going to give us n equals 9. So n equals 9. And you could plug that in here and see how it works out, that it works that way. So it's going to be 9, okay? Okay, so here we have circle A in the xy plane has the equation x minus 4 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 25. Circle A has a radius twice as big as circle B. The equation defining circle B is x squared plus 6x plus y squared plus 2y plus m equals 0. What is the value of y? Okay, so it's very similar to the last one, but the equation we get for circle B is not written in the standard form. We need to complete the square to get it written in the standard form. So let's start working on that, right? So what's the radius of circle A? So A radius equals square root of 25, which equals 5. So B radius, because we're told it's twice as big, is going to be 2 times 5, which is 10. Okay, so we need to get this equation. M has to give us something that makes a radius of 10. And it wouldn't just be 10 because this isn't completed in a square yet. So we're going to do x squared plus 6x plus y squared plus 2y plus m equals 0. But I'm going to forget about m for a bit, right? And I'm just going to focus on completing the square. You divide this by 2 and divide this by 2 squared and add it to both sides. So we're going to get x squared plus 6x plus 9, because that's 3 squared, right? Plus y squared plus 2y plus 1, because that's 1 squared. Okay. Plus m equals 0. Plus 9 plus 1, because we need it to be equal on both sides. So we're going to get equals 10. Right? Now, what do we want, right? The radius is 10. So r squared, if we square this, right, it should be 100. So we want 100 on this side. So we're going to have to move m over to get 100. So the equation we are going to get is x plus 3 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 100. All right, that's what we want. But how do we get 100? When we just have 10, m has to be a certain value, right? So right now, we have x plus 3 squared plus y plus 1 squared, whoops, plus 1 squared plus m equals 10, but we need that to be 100, so we're going to subtract m. So 10 minus m equals 100. So then negative m equals 90, and m equals negative 90. Okay? So this one, a bit more complicated than the last one because we have to make it into standard form. But if you know what it should look like and you know completing the square, then it's not too bad at all, right? And then you move that over and you find it. I think this is an interesting one because you do it and you can't really use Desmos too easily. And they like to do that. They like to make questions that are too confusing for Desmos or are just too tricky for it. So, and now here's another one, y equals 73. This one you could solve more easily writing it out, but it's still actually probably easier for a lot of people just to do it like this. And then you go up, see where it intersects, 73. We have 8 and we have -8. Clean, our answer is B. You see how quick that is? Very nice and clean. So again, Desmos can make a lot of questions super easy. That's why you want to get comfortable with using it. And all types. So we're going to be doing this one here, which is a circle question. Points A and B lie on a circle with center Z. The radius of the circle is 6 centimeters. Triangle ABC has a perimeter of 15 centimeters. What is the length in centimeters of AB? So if you can imagine a circle, we have a center Z. On the test, hopefully you wouldn't have to draw this out, but it might be helpful to draw it out. So I'm doing it for you all. And then we're going to have this point here, this here. Let's call this A and let's call this B. And then this is 6 and this is 6. And what are we told? That ABC has a perimeter of 15. So if you can believe it or not, this is a hard level question. But once you draw it out, what you can see is you would do AB equals 15 minus 6 minus 6. It's going to equal 3. So triangle ABCD has 15, AB equals 3. And that's all you do. What throws people off is they think they have to calculate it more specifically. They're going to draw this out, try to make a right triangle, try to solve from there. You don't need to do that. There's no trig involved because we know the perimeter and we know 2 sides. We can find the 3rd side. So what I want you to take from this is to keep things simple, draw them out. Remember that if you have a triangle where you have 2 radii, it's an isosceles triangle, and then go from there. For the following equation, 4n plus 4 equals 12n minus a, n plus 4. The sum of the solutions is equal to 49 over 3. What is the value of a? So the sum of the solutions is equal to this. We can see, because there's going to be n squared, if we follow this out, there'll be 2 solutions. So let's find one solution. They both have n plus 4. So they can both be n equals -4, because if you have -4, you'll get 0 on both sides. So you're going to do, let's find what the other solution could be by doing -4 plus, let's call it x, equals 49 over 3. X will equal 61 over 3. Now let's find what a is in terms of n to find what a is in terms of a solution. So we'll do 4n plus 4 equals 12 n minus a n plus 4, and I'm going to cancel out the n plus 4's. They're on each side, so we get 4 equals 12 n minus 12a. So 12a is going to equal 12n minus 4 when you subtract the 12n and divide by -1. So a equals n minus 1/3. And now let's plug in that solution of 61 over 3. So a equals 61 over 3 minus 1/3. And you will get here 60 over 3, which equals 20. Okay, so that's nice and clean. You have to keep in mind that there'll be 2 solutions because this is a quadratic, at most 2 solutions. And that one of the solutions we find by doing n equals -4. You find the other solution, plug that in here to see when that would work, and you'll be golden. Okay, so if you have questions on this, let me know. I'll be happy to help you. A rectangle is inscribed in a circle with each vertex lying on the circumference of the circle. The diagonal of the rectangle is twice the length of the shortest side of the rectangle. The area of the rectangle is 1,296 root 3 square units. The circumference of the circle is k pi. What is k? A lot of shapes inside circles going on here. So we have a circle, we have a rectangle inside. Again, helpful to draw Even though I'm not the greatest drawer in the world, it still helps me. You don't need to make it exact, you just need to make it so it clears up for you what's happening. So the area of the rectangle is that, so we have what we're told, the diagonal of the rectangle is twice the length of the shortest side of the rectangle. So that means that this is 2x, this is x. Automatically, right, this is a right triangle. And what you should notice is, if we did it out with Pythagorean theorem, we're going to get x root 3. And I can tell you that because if the hypotenuse is double the shortest length, then it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So let's work it out here though without that. So we'd have x squared. Let's call this y squared if you didn't know that, right? Equals 2x. And if you do know it, just skip ahead a little bit and then get to the good part. So I have x squared plus y squared. Actually, you should just pause the video and try it on your own and let me know what you get. Equals 4x squared. We would subtract x squared and get y squared equals 3x squared, and then y equals x root 3 once you square root. Okay, so now we have that, and what you can do is do x times x root 3 equals 1296. Root 3, the root 3's cancel, so you're going to get x squared equals 1296. I'm going to erase a bit. So x equals 36. Now what happens here is, think about it again. I shouldn't have erased it, honestly, because I'm going to use it again. But that's okay. Live and learn, right? You're learning now so that you don't have to mess up on the test. So this is 2x. So that is going to be 2x equals 72. Now that's the diameter. How do I know that's the diameter? Because if you draw out a rectangle like that, the center of it is going to be the center of the circle. So that means that this line is passing through the center and it's touching both ends, so it's going to be a diameter. Now, circumference equals either 2 pi r or diameter times pi. So here it's going to be 72 pi. So then k equals 72. Okay? It's nice and clear once you do it. Again, draw it out. Don't try to complicate things too much. Put the labels on things so you understand how the numbers are lining up in the real image of it. And then you'll go from there, and it's not too bad at all. So if you have questions on this, let me know. If you have variations on it, I'd be happy to try them out for you. Okay, this one's a classic proportion question. An ice cube has 91.67% of its volume submerged under water and glass. If the volume of the submerged ice is 12.58 centimeters cubed, what is the volume of the exposed part of the ice cube rounded to the nearest thousandth? So let's find the exposed part by doing 100 minus 91.67, and that's going to equal 8.33. So we'll do 8.33 over 91.67 equals x over 12.58. Classic proportion. We'll cross multiply and we'll get 91.67 x equals 8.33 times 12.58. Let's do that together in Desmos. So we'll do 8.33 times 12.58 divided by 91.67. And as you can see, it'll be 1.1431. So x equals 1.143 centimeters cubed. Okay, so that one's pretty straightforward. I think the thing that throws people off is they'll do 91.67 over 100 and find the whole ice cube, or they'll do 8.33 over 100 and find a number smaller than this. But this is the way you want to do it. A classic percentage question with proportions. The number of trout in a lake in 2024 was 1.36 times the number of trout in the lake in 2023. If the number of trout in 2023 is p% of the number of trout in the population in 2024, what is the value of p rounded to the nearest tenth? Okay. So this one's interesting because you have to do like almost an inverted percentage. So let's say trout in 2024, let's call that y equals 1.36x. And now we want to find 2023 in terms of that. So we're going to divide by 1.36. So x equals y over 1.36. So x will equal approximately 0.735y. And we want to convert that into percent, right? Because it's p percent. And that would be 73.5. Okay, so you just want to be careful and understand you're going from comparing 2024 to 2023 with the 1.36, and you want to divide so that you can compare 2023 to 2024, and then you want to convert the decimal into a percent. If you do that, you'll be golden. In February 2024, Abel grew 15% more tomatoes than in January 2024, and in March he grew 6% more than in February. If Abel grew m times as much in March as he grew in January, what is the value of m? Okay, so if m is, so let's say he grew 100 in January, right? 15% more would give us 115. And then we would multiply that by 1.06. And that would get us 121.9. Okay, so you can't grow that many flowers, but it's probably a bigger number than 100 then. So that would be 1.219 times as much as the original, and that would be C. M would be C. We've gone up 1.29. You can tell it's not going to be A because it's gone up, not down. 1.204 and 1.244 would be calculation errors. Okay, so if you understand the concept of how a percent can build on a previous percent, this one should be fine. We're on our penultimate question, category P. After the number of flowers in the garden increased by 500%, there were 720 flowers in the garden. How many flowers were originally in the garden? So it increased by 500%. And again, the wording increased by, not of. So let's say you start with n, and you're going to be adding on 500% is 5n equals 720. So that's 6n equals 720. So n equals, when you divide by 6, 120. Okay? So you just want to be careful on increased by, right? So of versus increased and decreased, and then also converting percentages to decimals. That's been the big theme of these questions at all levels. A survey is run to compare people's favorite forms of chocolate, depending on if it's dark or milk chocolate. For the survey, twice as many people prefer dark chocolate to milk chocolate. If a person's favorite form of chocolate is a truffle, what is the probability that the person prefers dark chocolate to milk chocolate? So we're told that twice as many people prefer dark chocolate, so we'll call this 2n, and this is n, right? So the probability the person prefers dark chocolate to milk if a person's favorite form of chocolate is truffle. So here it's 40, and this is 25%. But when we double it, this is going to be 80. And this one will still be 25. Why is that, right? Because there's twice as many people who like dark chocolate. So it's 40% of a doubled number. It's going to be doubled. So it's going to be 40 times 2. Whereas the other one will be 25 times 1. And that gives us 25, and that gives us 80. So it's going to be 80 out of the total. What is probably if the person prefers dark chocolate to milk? Out of 105, and that can simplify down to 16 over 21, and that will be your answer, right? So it's kind of a weird question. I think the thing that throws people off is they look at the truffle section, and you're like, oh, 40 to 25, and you just do 40% over 65%. But you want to double the 40% because there's twice as many people who like the dark chocolate. John has 12 cartons of 15% chocolate milk and 13 cartons of 20% chocolate milk. If he pours them all together, what is the percent of chocolate in the final solution? Okay, so what people would want to do is do 15 and 20, average them out, and get 17.5. But That would be if you had one carton and one carton, or an equal number of cartons and an equal number of cartons. But this is slightly unbalanced because there's 12 here and 13. So you multiply each of them together with their number of cartons, add them up, and divide by the number of cartons. So that's going to be 12 times 15. I'm going to leave it as a percent since our answer will be percents anyways, plus 13 times 20 all over 25. And now you can actually divide everything by 5. So that becomes 5 on the bottom, 3, 4, that's a fun trick there. 12 times 3 is 36. 13 times 4 is 52. And then on the bottom you have 5. 36 plus 52 equals anyone? That's right, it is going to be 88 over 5. And what's 88 over 5? Not 17.5, it's going to be 17.6. What I want you to notice is 17.6 is a little bigger than 17.5, which makes sense. It's going to be closer to 20% than 15% because there's more of the 20% milk than the 15% milk. So that's going to shift it there. The more you have of something, the closer you're going to be to the value. That's why it's a weighted average. It carries more weight in this calculation. We have to estimate something where we're combining values and go from there. So a survey of college students at a university were asked their opinions on lowering taxes on the rich. The data are summarized in the table to the left. If the school has 20,000 students and the data is representative of the school, what is the best estimate of the number of students at the university who either strongly or somewhat oppose lowering taxes on the rich? So strongly or somewhat, I would fall into that category, but you would do 64 plus 35. And that gets you 99. And then if we add up the other parts, we're going to have 19 plus 31 plus 31. And that's going to give us 81. So plus 99. All right, and you could just use your calculator for this, but I'm working it out here as 180. So the proportion would be 99 out of 180. And you would multiply that by 20,000. And that would give us 11,000 students, okay? So that would be the best estimate. And sometimes they might not even say best estimate, even though it should be an estimate. But when they say it's representative, that's saying it's very accurate to the whole population, so you can just use that value. Okay, so for this one, it would just be 11,000. It's nice and clean. There's no answer choices. And it just takes a bit of adding and dividing to work it out. But you just have to feel confident about knowing what to do. And I think watching this video will help you feel confident. And always ask me questions if you still have doubts. So in this one, 2x squared plus 2y squared plus 12x minus 8y equals 45. The equation above defines a circle in the xy plane. What are the coordinates of the center of the circle? What many people will do is they'll complete the square and solve out for that, and that's totally fine, but that takes way longer than just plugging it in, as I'm doing, and then seeing what we get. So minus 12x minus 8y equals 45. Then we go down here, let's zoom in. So we have 6, negative 4. We already know that's not going to work. So it has to be x is negative and y would be positive. The only one that's like that is d, right? That would make sense. Negative 3, 2. Okay, that would be right around here and up here. That looks like the center. So it'd be negative 3, 2. Quick, just like that. It'd be even faster for you because you'd have a bigger screen to work on with the Desmos. I'm making mine small so you can see the equation and it, but it's just that fast. Negative 3 over 2. All the other options don't make sense. I didn't have to do any calculations, didn't have to worry about writing things down and making mistakes. Just plugging in the equation into Desmos gives me the center. Okay, and here is another one. X plus y equals 1, x minus y equals x squared minus 2. What is the solution for the systems of equation above? Instead of doing elimination method or substitution method, I'm just going to plug in and see what I get. So we have x plus y equals 1, x minus y equals x squared minus 2. We have two options, right? We have this one here, 2.4 and negative 0.41. If we look here, 1 plus root 2, 1 plus root 2, negative root 2, and root 2. So what is root 2? That's going to be a factor in this. So we'll do boom, boom. 1.41. So this would be 2.41, 2.41, negative 1.41, positive 1.41. Now this is negative 0.41, so it's none of those. 2.41, so it has to be A or B. And then we have negative 1.41, so it has to be b, negative root 2. It's just that quick. We don't have to calculate anything besides doing these calculations here. I don't have to write anything down. I'm just typing things in. So this is a hard level question that could take a lot longer if you're working it out and you'd be more prone to mistakes. Here, it's just easy peasy. So here again, you notice, right, that a lot of the hard questions all have charts. They like to have that in there either to read and give you info or to throw you off the scent. 3 random samples of townsfolk, ask them if they run as a form of exercise. The samples are selected from the same population and the margin of error is calculated using the same method. Which of the following is the most appropriate reason that the margin of error for sample B is greater than the margin of error for sample C and less than the margin of error for sample A? Okay, so margin of error for sample B, right, is greater than C, but less than A. Why would that be, right? Sample B had higher response rate than sample A and a lower response rate than sample C. Sample B had a larger sample size than sample A and a smaller sample size than sample C. Sample B had a smaller sample size than sample A and a larger sample size than sample C. And D, sample B is closer to 50%. So this is testing if you understand how margin of error is developed, right? And the way margin of error works is the bigger your sample, the more confident you are, and the smaller the margin of error. So it should be B. Sample B is going to have a larger sample size than sample A. That's why its margin of error is smaller, because you're more confident because you've done more data collection. But it'll be bigger than sample C because sample C had a bigger size. So the people who did that are even more confident. So this is an abstract conceptual question, no real math involved, just asking to see if you understand how margin of error and sample size are related. So here's another one where if you know the unit circle, you don't need a calculator, you don't need Desmos. But if you don't, instead of drawing it out or thinking it through, you could just do sine 33 pi. It's a nice quick calculation. I saw some people post on Reddit being like, do we need to know the unit circle? Maybe in the future, maybe for other questions, but not for this one, all right? So again, trust Desmos. Remember, it's always there. And now the equation for gravitational acceleration can be written as G equals capital G m1 times m2 all over d squared, where G is the gravitational constant, m1 and m2 are the individual masses of the objects, and d is the distance between them. What is G in terms of G, m1, m2, and d? Okay, so there are some numbers here, but they don't really count, right? Because this is just labeling, and this is just a squared. But you want to isolate G. When it says in terms of, you want to isolate, right? And you want to look at all the answer choices to get a sense of what you're looking for, right? So they all have little g, d, and m and m1. m1 and m2. So here, let's start by moving the d squared over. So we have g equals g m1 m2 over d squared. This is a physics equation, which they like to do where they take real equations from other fields and have you solve for certain parts of it. So then we'll multiply both sides by d squared. Multiply by d squared, we're going to get g d squared equals capital G m1 m2. And then we are going to get g by itself by dividing by m1 m2. So then we're going to get capital G equals lowercase g times d squared over m1 m2. And that is B, right? So even though there are no numbers here, we can still treat the variables and constants like numbers and work with them like that. And the answer choices obviously make our life a lot easier. You can see right off the bat, after I multiply by d squared, I could eliminate A. And then there's no reason why I'd square root, so I could eliminate D. But otherwise, it's just simple math made complicated by using letters instead of numbers. But if you can analyze this carefully, then you'll be doing great. Okay. So here the question is the density of a certain type of metal is 238 kilograms per cubic foot. A cube made of this metal is found to have a mass of 230 kilograms. To the nearest hundredth of a foot, what is the length of one edge of this sample? So we're told that it's a cube, right? That should hint that we're already talking about shapes and geometry, right? Three-dimensional geometry, right? Because a cube is a three-dimensional object. And then the density right, is also involved in geometry and with units, right? So the units here are kilograms per cubic foot. And a cube, right, is the same side length cubed. That's how we'd find its volume. Right, so we could call all these like n. So to the nearest hundredth of a foot, what is the length of one edge of this sample? Okay, so we're going to take the 233 kilograms, right? And that's the mass that we're dealing with, and we're going to convert that into volume and then convert the volume into edge length, right? Now remember, density equals mass divided by volume, right? So here we have 238 kilograms over 1 cubic foot. So we're going to do railroad method with the 233 kilograms to find how many feet cubed we have, cubic feet we have. So it's going to be 233 kilograms. And then we're going to do 1 foot cubed, right? Because that's how much is in 238 kilograms. And we know to put the kilograms on the bottom because we want the units to cancel out and we want to be left with the cubic feet units. Okay, so now what we do is we do 233 divided by 238. And that's going to give us 233 divided by 238 gives us 0.979. And I'm a big fan of not using calculators, but even I use a calculator for this. So this is feet cubed. Now that's volume, right? And it's not asking for volume, and I think a lot of people would get thrown off and see 2.979 and they would round up to this one and find it from there, but we're not going to do that, right? Because this is the volume and it's asking for the length of one side. So we're going to do n cubed equals 0.979, and then you're going to find that n equals, right, 0.979 to the 1/3 power, or you can think about it as the cubic root of 0.979, and that gives us 9929, which when you round becomes 0.99. So that would be B, right? So it's complicated because we're dealing with density, which has 2 units, right? Kilograms and cubic feet. And then we have to use the mass that we're given to find the volume of this object, which is more simple once we get there. But the big trick is to remember to convert the volume into length, right? And I think that's one step where people will get thrown off. A lot of people, I think there's sort of funnels of places where people get messed up. And the first funnel is like reading the question, understanding it. A lot of people get stopped there. And then the other one is forgetting to convert the volume into length, right? They sort of bombard you with information and then are trying to overwhelm you with it. But if you stay focused and you are feeling comfortable with it, it shouldn't be too bad.
Okay, that is it. Those are the predictions for the December test. I've had a pretty good streak before on predicting what types of questions will show up, so I'm feeling good about this one. And you should be feeling good about the test overall. And I hope it is sunny where you are, but if it's not, remember, I hope the rain is cleaning your windows and watering your plants. Bye.